Hey, Terry.
Hello, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, good. Thanks, and you?
Good, getting better. I think things are much better here, opening up, right? I also wanted to send an agenda, but then I decided, I didn't have something specific, and I was just, also want to see, in general. Is it Thomas?
Yes. Hello.
Hey, Thomas. Which organization do you belong to?
PwC. I've been invited by Marcin Jimenez from PwC US.
Okay, okay. So, and so what are you doing, Thomas, in PwC around MLOps in general?
My key role is data scientist, but currently we are working on Kubernetes and CueFlow, so more into MLOps and this kind of stuff. So yeah, briefly my agenda.
Okay, you are working on CueFlow. So any specific parts of CueFlow which you are using or?
Rather just trying what are the main components and get to know CubeFlow better. And it's not yet in production, so.
Okay, okay. Yeah, if you need some lowdown into the details of CueFlow, right? I mean, you can reach out. So
Yeah, thanks.
yeah, I was, just yeah. So thinking in terms of the timing, right? So you have that APAC call. So how many hours before this that happens?
It's morning time for me. So it's mid-morning for me when that call happens, and we're currently sort of end of play. So is it about 4 or 5 hours earlier?
4 or 5 hours earlier. Okay. Is there an option? I was thinking like, do we need to cause if we shift that to the evening or time, then can we have like one single call which can probably work across both the zones?
No, the problem was that a number of people are not able to attend um, in this time slot. Because we're primarily looking at people who are in sort of Oceania time zones. So it doesn't line up very well for them.
Okay. I mean, more general, yes. I think the current time slot as is wouldn't work, right? But if, for example, we take something like, let's say, 5 p.m. Pacific time, US Pacific time, which is probably, but more later in the Eastern time zone. Maybe, if you want to make it more conducive, but something like that, can it work across both the organization?
Yeah,
Both.
we tried looking at that, but we couldn't get it to fit for everybody. So this was the slot that was the one that everyone agreed to as the best compromise. But it's not a problem because we'll end up with a good working group on each team, and I'm quite happy to sort of bridge the gap in between them. I don't mind doing 2 sessions in a day. So if there's nothing specific that you want to discuss, I'm happy to go straight into the update on where we are with the roadmap stuff.
Yeah, that will be good.
Okay, just a sec. Let me. So where we are at the moment is working on the technology requirements table within the roadmap. And so we're encouraging people to go through the challenges table and understand the individual challenges that we've got listed, and then to start to look at the technology requirements that we need in order to address those specific challenges, and start to contribute pieces into this table. So thus far we've been looking just at the first couple of items, which are around the basics of what we need in terms of things like treating machine learning assets as first-class citizens within a DevOps process framework. The other piece of work that's going on at the moment is adding a basic glossary of terms, so that we've got some standard definitions for the various pieces that we're discussing. The session this week was primarily talking about the differences between sort of standard CI/CD and DevOps behaviors and the more specific and unique aspects that we need to think about from a machine learning perspective. So specifically looking at the scaling challenge of how do you work with very large numbers of either GPU or TPU accelerators in a machine learning perspective. How do you go from a pure Kubernetes view of the world, which is CPU based, to a model in which you may need to be targeting dedicated hardware, and then also discussing some of the challenges around how we manage the data flow component within the machine learning world, how we version sets of data as specific instances of training and test data, and how we think about the ability to audit that data and have a consistent view of which data sets we use for which operations within a pipeline.
So that's so I think this is great in terms of the way it is evolving, Terry. Like when you're looking at the implementations for these, right? You have certain technologies in mind which you're looking at, or is this something you're asking the community to develop around? And in general, the other part of it is something like machine learning models consuming GPUs, etc. I think this is definitely something which is, from a larger MLOps perspective, it makes a lot of sense, right? But when you look at this the pipeline stories in the CD Foundation in general, do you think they have a role to play in this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the best way to think about this is to look at this table, which is the potential solutions table. The purpose of this is to try and paint a picture of where we are in terms of maturity on capabilities within the roadmap. So the color coding here is the gray areas are areas where we've already got capabilities and they're just continuously evolving. The blue areas are areas where we know we need stuff, and stuff is being built. And the yellow areas are the the areas where we actually have big unknowns, where there's potentially no proper activity going on. So the view of the roadmap is that what we need to do is take both a medium-term and a long-term view about what capabilities we actually need within MLOps, and then to paint the picture of what's already there, what can we do today, what can we do with CueFlow, what can we do with the other components that already exist, and then highlight what gaps there are and where we need to evolve solutions in the future to meet those requirements. So this is about giving everyone a picture of where there are opportunities in the space where existing solutions or new solutions can be developed to fill those gaps and fit a need.
Okay. Thanks. I think one thing which might be worthwhile also checking is, in these areas, right? So for example, serving machine learning models, right? There is a CueFlow project called KF Serving. And there is quite a bit of work happening there and has already happened there around, tying your models which are being deployed to GPUs or CPUs, right? Choosing what hardware you want, right? What sort of capacity from that hardware you want. And most of these projects under the CueFlow umbrella are now publishing roadmap.md, right? Which is essentially more tactical, I would say, a year look at what we think is, the direction for the project for the year. So it might be worthwhile looking and checking as well from that perspective. And I think, where this can help is, there are like projects under the CueFlow umbrella around, distributed training, hyperparameter optimization, model serving, metadata, pipelines, right? But beyond that, if there are other emerging areas, right, where the community should be looking at, right? So obviously, things like federated learning, right? Or when you start going, a bit of layers on top, right? Auto ML, auto AI, right? And then there's still not something, right, which around which, there are projects which we have spawned under the CueFlow umbrella. But I think, they're getting quite a bit of traction. We are seeing a lot of requests now coming around federated learning, or so to say, multi-cloud learning. Different people are, giving it different names, where or edge learning, where essentially, the training data is spread across multiple edge devices. And then, you are doing local training, but syncing the data, and then, correlating it, right? So capabilities around that, those are the things which we are seeing more and more being asked now, in more so in the commercial space. And we yet don't see something, right, in the open source, which is sort of claiming that space very strongly. So I think that will be an area worth investigating as well, where this is going more into, the edge devices in the IoT scenario, where data is spread across multiple devices. And then, you need to be able to perform local computations, local training, and be able to, sync back.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of interest in the sort of wearable space, for example, where we're expecting to see a lot of target devices needing inference on edge devices in wearable, which will have to be very small dedicated hardware. So that drives the discussion about cross compilation and delivery into ASICs, if you like. And then I'm also seeing a lot of customer demand in the industrial space. So there's a lot of work going on with sort of industrial Internet of Things and factory automation, stuff like that, where there are some very interesting challenges, especially around the latency of systems and the need to be able to train against very large data sets, but inference in real time very close to machines that are, either safety related or are dealing with very high value processes where it's critical that they can make complex decisions at high speed. So a big reason for having the roadmap really is to start to paint the picture of all of these quite complex scenarios in which a basic cloud-based solution is not going to be fit for purpose, and that we need to actually be thinking ahead and designing much more subtle approaches to how we manage some of these problems, but still bring this overarching consistency to the development process, so that you've got solid governance processes that that can be used in high-risk commercial situations to guarantee the sort of standards that we need on these types of product deliveries.
Great, thanks. Thomas, is that something of, when you're looking at it, PwC perspective, you are obviously in early stages of implementation, right? Are there overarching requirements which you are looking at it from your organization perspective, and what is driving you to CueFlow?
Yeah, well, particularly important seems to be inferencing. As you said, it's really interesting topic, especially for those edge devices like wearables and so on. We as PwC are currently looking into cache serving and the design for like models like churn score or this kind of customer lifetime value, and putting our models into production through cache serving and trying out to build APIs automatically. So this is really particularly interesting for us. And also the scalability of CueFlow is very, very handy and helps us keep costs on like decent amounts.
Okay. So yeah, if you're aware of the Slack channel, right, for CueFlow and CF serving in general?
No. If you may share with me, it would be useful.
Yeah, so let me can I share my screen for a while, Terry?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so let me just share. So right, in general, there is a CF serving. Let me just point you to, so there is a presentation, right, where we gave a lot of the details, right? This one, right? So this was a talk at KubeCon, right, which myself and Clive, he's the CTO of Selden, right, we gave last year. This goes into a lot of the details and also, has links to the Slack channel, etc. But, how does CF serving work? That was essentially, the focus. I mean, essentially, if you see the companies who came together to build this, right? I mean, Selden is a startup from London, right? And they've created Selden model serving engine in open source, right? The rest of the names you're probably more familiar with, right? But the idea was to do this, on essentially, scale to zero model, because the point of, model serving engines taking, or the models deployed taking a lot of the GPU resources and still sitting there and not being able to, scale down to zero if there is no traffic, right? It has become concerning. So that was one of the primary ideas. But beyond that, things like, traffic splitting, A/B testing, canary testing, explainability, drift detection, right? And so I think definitely. And so the Slack for CueFlow is cueflowslack.com. And then when you go there is a Slack channel for CF serving, right? And if you see, pretty vibrant, close to now getting there, and it seems the last item is the one which I need to reply to, right? So I've heavily, I need to respond to this. But I'm heavily involved there, right? So, and so is, the other folks. Dan, see this last comment which spanned over 247, that is, Dan. So he's from Bloomberg, right? So Bloomberg is totally running KF serving right now in production, spread across, multiple nodes. So I think if he's probably the best person right now in the community, given the the amount of he's living with it day in and day out in terms of running it, as well as definitely contributing. So yeah, so just register on that Slack channel. KF serving is there. As well, if you want to, if you have interest in the CueFlow pipelines, right? It has its own channel around it.
Oh, that's really awesome. Really.
Yeah.
Take the opportunity. And currently we are, for example, facing some issues on Azure and with authentication against DEX with KF serving, as I can't get over RBAC. Maybe it's an issue of Knative and these kind of things, but yeah, I will ping those guys in the Slack channels. I think it can be really helpful.
Next part, right? So there is if you're facing issues, we just introduced, debugging guide in KF serving, right? So you can essentially go through, if and that sort of explains the flow, right? How the flow is flowing from Istio to Istio local gateway to Kube proxy, right? So does, depending on the scenarios you are hitting, hopefully you can find one of the resolutions there, right? But the goal is to continue growing this debug guide, right? The DEX in general has been challenging with this KF serving, because DEX doesn't allow you to do programmatic authentication, and you need it's more something where you can have a UI actually generating the JWT tokens and you authentication and authorizing based on that. But the latest release of KF serving, right, which is KF serving 0.3, I don't know which release you are using. If you're using 0.3, that's what, along with Knative 0.11.2, is what we are recommending to get around some of the DEX probe issues.
Yeah, I've installed KF serving like a week or two ago, so I'm almost sure that I'm using this 0.3.
And your Knative version is, what we're recommending is 0.11.2. There was a fix which we got, and I need to update this, right? There was a fix which we got, which was essentially around DEX probing, right? Which was causing issues for authentication and authorization related entry points in KF serving, right? So.
Okay. Yeah, I will need to read more about these issues. I'm not sure what version of Knative we do have, but first I will start with that diagram. I think it's particularly useful that you showed in debugging. Cool. Yeah, and where, for example, I find where PwC can take initiative is for this explainability. Maybe we have a framework for called Responsible AI for explaining our neural network models, like for stability testing and bias and other kinds of things that can be tested on neural network models. So one day we can just put it into that module for explainability.
So that will be great, right? So do you have the GitHub repository for your frameworks, right? So one of the
I'm not sure. It's just a high-level idea, and I think it might be even PwC proprietary solution that has no open source code. But
you're aware of these projects from IBM around AI Fairness 360, which is around bias detection and mitigation.
Yeah, something similar. Yeah, or.
Okay, because we have just to give you an idea, right? Around this topic in general, trusted AI, we call it trusted AI, right? We have projects around AI fairness, which is AI Fairness 360. There is adversarial robustness toolbox, which is around, detecting adversarial attacks and defending against them, right? This is being used right now by DARPA, for adversarial attack and defense mechanisms. It's funded by DARPA. And
are there any GitHub repositories that I can look at?
Yes, let me share, right? So this is what, this is, if you go to just github.com/IBM, you will see, right? So AI Fairness 360 is, pinned here, right? This is for bias detection and mitigation, right? And there's a pretty cool, website also where you can try it out, run some demos at your end, etc., to detect and mitigate bias. The second thing is, I mentioned the adversarial robustness toolbox. So this is a project, which is right now initiated by IBM. DARPA has given a grant. They are actually using it in defense research, right? So pretty popular and adopted, right? So a lot of the defense mechanisms, evasion attacks, extraction attacks, poisoning attacks, and then, beyond the attacks, how do you actually implement defense mechanisms, right? So if you're interested in this space, that's another one, right? On the explainability side, we have our project called, let me see, AI Explainability 360, right? So this one is essentially, quite a bit of algorithms from IBM research, right? And that also has its website, but also, provides an interface on top of Lime and Chap, right? So if you go there to the website as well, right, it's listed in the GitHub. It talks about, all the different methods it is using. You can run your own, scenario demos and try it out, right? What does it mean in terms of generating explanations for different kinds of consumers? So, yeah. So yeah, these are the 3 projects, and even I will ping you this link, right? I have given a detailed talk around this. Trusted AI. So the 3 projects, here. So I'll ping you both the links around the serving side, and we are, in the process of also integrating these projects into KF serving, right? So.
Wow, that will be pretty cool then, if it's integrated one day.
Yeah, because at a basic level, there are 2 areas where I'm trying to find the chat option here. Okay. So this one, let me.
And can you validate, for example, TensorFlow models, or is it, what kind of models or library is it, or framework is it focused on?
Which one? Which?
AX 360 and this explainability and stability frameworks.
Yeah, no, they work across frameworks, right? So
across, cool.
Yeah. And
are you using model objects there, or just model results and then trying to reconstruct what's done within the model?
So AI explainability, for example, right? When you're looking at, and let me just get to the project itself. This has explainability at different levels. So if you can expand, right? So the idea is that what we call there is explainability algorithms for the data itself, right? But when you actually go to models, we have 2 areas. One is local explanation. The second is global explanation. And local explanation is essentially the model results, right? Global explanation is where you are essentially treating model as a black box, right? You don't have access to the internals of the model, or the model is fairly complex deep learning model, right? So how do you generate explanations for this? So right, the algorithms, one of the algorithms we use is having a surrogate model, right, which is learning over the explanations and creating its own modified explanation around that, right? So both are supported. To your pinpoint question, right, the actual, if you want explanation for local results, or you want explanations for a model where you don't have much access to the internals, right, there are different algorithms supporting that.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah, so I pinged both of them, both the links in the chat. I will also add it to the meeting note, right? One is a talk on KF serving, one is around the trusted AI umbrella we have, and I would be interested to see, what you have on the responsible AI initiative at your end, right? And see if there are areas and opportunities for collaboration.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks. Thanks for the links, and that was really helpful.
Thanks. I do see. Hey, David.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Hi, everybody. I just gonna say I'm just dropping in as well, just catch up with where things are. And if you have a few minutes, I'd just like to ask some things about promoting MLOps SIG in the upcoming CDF newsletter.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Tracy. Is there still an opportunity?
Yes, well, we have the newsletter. It's going out pretty soon, but a couple of things. So Animesh, I think we'll look to repost your blog post in there just to highlight the SIG. Marky Jackson has written an article as well, just a bit more sort of generic on MLOps. And then the other thing I was going to ask Terry, if like, I think it would be pretty cool to stick in the vision from the roadmap as a post that just links then to the roadmap. Again, just another way to get some eyes on it and increase the visibility for folks to see. So Terry, would you be okay with me posting there? I'd put it under your name as a standalone.
Michael and I are planning to put some stuff together over the weekend, so we should have something for you next week.
Oh, I will need to check with Jackie because I think her deadline was tomorrow. So let me check with her.
Okay, feel free to ping me offline on that one.
Okay, no problem. And in general, I think we'd like to start using things like the newsletter more regularly. So we have a recurring theme of MLOps. So maybe every, I don't know what it will be, 6 or 9 months. But then the other thing we want to tie in with the other CDF events. So if folks are interested in either participating in the podcast or webinars, please ping me, let me know, and I'll help sync that up with Jackie, who's running the show, and all those things.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Tracy. One question I have is like, is there a larger group for the overall CD foundation, right? I think one of the things we do want to now do is like, get the folks who are actually behind, some of these projects like Jenkins or, things like Tecton, etc., be a little bit more, and depending, right? I mean, even with that audience, right, there will be a subset of the audience which is, more interested in evolving that particular CI/CD tool towards MLOps needs, right? So I think it would be good for us from time to time, right, be able to communicate, what's happening there, where we are. So there is, yeah.
Yes. So what I was thinking there, and the general body where we have a lot of the project representatives and folks from the communities around the projects is the Technical Oversight Committee. I know towards the end of last year, it was kind of lost a bit of momentum, but Dan Lawrence has come in as the new chair. So he's reviving things quite well. And what he's looking to do is get updates from the SIGs on a regular basis. So the interoperability SIG did an update at the last talk. So it would be great to have, say, yourself, Animesh, come and do an overview of all the activities that have happened in the MLOps group and make sure like the project folks are aware and they can kind of get connected in and work out how to, progress things together.
Makes sense. Thanks. Yeah, I think it's probably, I mean, one of the things, right, we have been doing as a dedicated, activity as part of the SIG was, the project around this, right, which is more hands-on exercise, on-ground exercise, where we are essentially, trying to build something and deliver something, right, which can be used, right? So we have made quite a bit of progress with this, right? So I think I definitely want to go back and be able to talk to the larger CD Foundation, right, that where we are and at the end of phase 1, and essentially, where we need more help as we move into phase 2 of this particular project, right? Where essentially our phase 1 was, bring, the CueFlow pipeline Python interface on top of Tekton, right? So you can use Python programmatic ways of defining pipelines, Tekton pipelines. So that's achieved. The second phase is where we essentially, instead of going to Tekton directly, we want to orchestrate through CueFlow pipeline engine. And the reason for doing that would be, to get the CueFlow pipeline UI and the lineage tracking and the artifact tracking all integrated around Tekton, right? So I think, I would love to figure out, how to now, bring it and present it to the larger group there in the CD Foundation.
Yeah. So who's your audience for this? Is it developers you want to contribute, or end users who might consider using it or maybe packaging it up as part of a platform?
I think both. It's primary, I would like to see, there are folks who are interested in evolving, right? Something like this for their own needs, right? And by virtue of getting users, also you get more feedback, right? Things are. So I think even if they don't want to contribute, but if they have a need, right, where they are essentially, someone who are running Tekton and they want to, evolve it towards machine learning needs, and they want to bring, a Python way of programming, plus, the more advanced MLOps based GUI of CueFlow pipeline, where you get artifact tracking, where you get lineage tracking, right? So, yeah, I mean, users, and by virtue of getting users, hopefully, you get more contributors, right? That's always the case.
Yeah. Okay, this sounds like something we can connect you with Jackie to do a webinar. We've now got CDF running regular webinars, and I know she's looking for topics, and I think this would work quite well. So how about I'll connect the two of you, and I'll point you at the form where you just need to sort of book your slot in. Does that sound good?
Yeah, makes total sense. Thanks a lot.
And anything else that's going on I should be aware of, or maybe I can connect to either the governing board or to the other groups doing things?
No, I think these are the two primary, I mean, the roadmap activity plus, on hands, on ground technical project right now is, the CueFlow pipeline and Tekton integration work, right, which is happening at much faster speed, right, and active in development. And today's discussion, as you saw, right, I mean, depending on the community needs, right, so today's discussion was more focused, like, around model serving and model explainability, model fairness, right? So that's the second part of that house, that, the pipelines hopefully are helping you to get to the point where your models are deployed, right? But how you deploy that and them in production, and how do you enable things like explainability, bias detection, drift detection, right? So hopefully, we start getting, some more focus around that area, and then we can, think of carving out something more specific in that space. Yeah.
Great. Good to hear.
Thanks a lot. So yeah, Thomas, it will be great to, get some more details around your responsible AI initiative, and see, how we can, there is a trusted AI committee as well as part of the Linux Foundation AI, right? Which essentially is more focused around these areas: bias, explainability, adversarial detection and generation, right? So if you're interested, right, you can reach out to me and I can get you connected there, so you can join that as well, if that's your area of interest.
Yeah, it would be great. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hey, Animesh, I have two questions. This is Luis, also from PwC. I'm an ML engineer in the same team as Thomas. So one of the things that we were reading about the integration with Tekton is that the other framework that they were comparing was TFX, Google's TFX. Did that go anywhere? So you guys are moving forward with Tekton?
Yeah, so let me share this, right? So essentially the integration, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the integration with TFX is at a different level than what you are thinking in terms of the Tekton, right? So this is, for example, CueFlow pipeline, and it works with Argo as an engine under the covers, right? What we are doing is replacing Argo, bringing in Tekton, right?
Mhm.
The rest of the entry point remains the same, right? So essentially there is a merge happening at an SDK level. So the first version of that SDK is ready, right? And if you are interested, I can connect you with the right counterpart in Google, where you can get an early version of the SDK. They're doing beta testing inside Google currently to ensure, so that is the merged SDK where you can use, either the same SDK to draft TFX pipeline or a KFP pipeline, right? So that's the SDK story, where essentially, one single SDK, if you define a pipeline using CueFlow Pipeline, DSL semantics, or using, TFX, you can use that single SDK and launch it. The second work, which is a bit longer term, is, aligning around the same DSL as well, right? So which is essentially, right now, yes, you can use the same SDK, but, the Python DSL for both are quite different, right? So how you will define a TFX pipeline versus how you will define a CueFlow pipeline, the syntax and the semantics are different, right? So that's where there is that discussion going on, right, heavily. And part of it is, that's something which the internal Google teams need to come themselves together as well, right, which is the TFX team and the KFP team. So multiple discussions on that side, but yet not materialized, right? And the third angle to this is that, as I was showing you, right, when we are looking at phases, let me go back to one of the slides, or maybe it's later. IR, intermediate representation, right? So assuming you have aligned around SDK, which has happened, right? So hopefully it will be, more widely distributed. Then the second thing was DSL. The third thing is, when you compile, you want to compile to something intermediate, right? And not specifically to an Argo YAML or a Tecton YAML. By virtue of compiling to something intermediate, right, there is now an opportunity to create a industry standard, right, around how pipelines should be defined in a more neutral language, which then, the KFP engine can interpret based on the target given to it. Hey, this is the IR, and your target is Tecton or Argo, or tomorrow in future, maybe it's Jenkins, right? And thou shall be able to convert that IR back to that corresponding engine, right? So this is the third phase of that, right? Which is, a little bit more in the future, right? So long answer to your question, but short answer, the combined SDK is ready. The next will be, looking at that we have the same DSL, which is essentially you define using the same way, whether it's a TFX pipeline or KFP pipeline. And the third angle to it would be, you also compile to something which is common across everything. And the engine takes that common standard. So if we align around this IR, you can take the same IR to if you're running TFX, or you can take the same intermediate representation if you're running to CueFlow pipeline.
Okay. Now TFX also kind of not compiled, but like you can also use it as a structure for an Airflow pipeline. Is there a possibility that we could use that intermediate representation structure to create an Airflow pipeline that you can run perhaps locally on your machine rather than on Kubernetes?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the TFX right now has this concept of runners, right? So Airflow is one of the runners behind TFX, right? So by virtue of it, assuming there is a single SDK, you're compiling to a single IR, and that's what TFX is taking, right? And then what is the runner TFX has chosen, right? So when you are running TFX, you have chosen Airflow as a runner, right? Logically, that should work on Airflow, right? But as I said, this part of it where there is this common IR which we all are using, it's still, I would say at this point, there are like a lot of emails back and forth. We are trying to establish that communication, and maybe David, this is also an opportunity, an area where you can help, where I think we are heavily interested in this. Lyft has come, they are interested in this intermediate representation, right? So if
yeah, Animesh, honest to God, this is a dream. I've been hoping that we would get to this sooner or later. Obviously it required a lot of work in CueFlow to make it worth this investment, but absolutely, we would love to see that intermediate representation and participate in it.
Yeah, so so there is an email chain, right, which we have going on with Pavel on that side, right? It would be, I mean, if like with what Wally were doing with ML spec, right, or the pipeline metadata, or
Yep.
defining pipeline, so I think I would see that you have a inherent interest in it, right? If you can make it more like also that yes, Microsoft is heavily interested in standardizing this, that will sort of speed up some activity on this side, right? I think.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm interested in this both as a Microsoftie and as just someone in the ML community broadly. Absolutely, this is a dream, really.
Okay, yeah, cool. Great, thanks. I think we are at anything else anyone has to bring up? If not,
Nope, I'm good.
Thanks. I think this was a great discussion today, and I will compile and send an email, right, with the links, etc., right, for both around the KF serving trusted AI, as well as around the TFX KFP work, right, and Terry's roadmap is in the SIG MLOps repo itself, right? So there is one single link to go to that, right? And if there is any other thing, right, which you need in terms of how to reach out on different areas, whether it's the trusted AI part, bias explainability, or the Tecton, CueFlow Pipeline integration, or KFP TFX, just shoot off an email and I'll be glad to help. Yeah.
That's great.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks all.
Thank you.
Animesh, please do add me to that thread. I'd love to talk.
Okay, I'll get
you.
Thank you.
Could you add me as well? Thomas.bihirt@pwc.com.
Yeah.
Or should I ping it through email or Slack?
I will send out an email, and you can, there is a meeting minutes note, right? You can add your email there, so that would be perfect then.
Okay,
I will send out an email compiling the notes for today. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.